Hello and welcome back to the Blame Game. The LCS has finally kicked off with the first week of lock-in tournament, which means we get some gameplay to dissect. We're starting this episode off with Abbedagge vs FlyQuest, as well as Bwipo's Scion build. So without much further ado, let's get into it. Psych, there is more ado. A whopping 42% of you watched the first episode of the Blame Game unsubbed, and there are only 330 new subs on that video. I swear to God, if this video doesn't get at least 500 new subs, next week I will screech randomly during the video and try and blow out your ears, okay? Also, I record this live on my twitch.tv/themarkz, so if you want to see how these are made, you can do that right now. Twitch chat's just spamming away, trying to distract me, but I'm too focused. Our first topic this week is from one of the biggest upsets in lock-in so far, which is the 0-2 FlyQuest taking down 100 Thieves. Abbedagge in particular was criticized for being invisible most of the game more than anyone else on his team. With this draft, 100 Thieves got counterpick for both of their solo lanes, as well as securing closers Viego. This should translate to easy topside control in order to push in and get deep wards down to scout the Xin out, followed by heavy trading in your winning lanes for then Viego to show up and pick up some cleanup kills. However, I have no other word to describe how 100 Thieves approach this game than lazy. It honestly felt like the stereotypical trap game. In the first 17 minutes of gameplay, 100 Thieves never placed a deep ward. The furthest they ever got was into the jungle entrances of their opponent, as opposed to getting them on top of the actual clearing paths that the Xin would take. They also never worked in tandem to push in for deep vision together. Everyone was content to just sit in lane and jungle and AFK farm. Even this wasn't handled particularly intelligently because on their first Mountain Drake force, they did it on a mid reset from Abbedagge and closer showed on a ward afterwards, meaning Xin Zhao could trade that out for the Rift Herald on the strongest point of the map, 400 Thieves for free. This, combined with the second rift, which was also dropped mid, meant that FlyQuest took the 100 Thieves mid lane turret pre-20 minutes. Abbedagge in particular was well targeted by FlyQuest's first usage of their packet. Dakuli uses it aggressively in lane to bait a counterattack from Abbedagge, which is then punished because he had Jose Diodo in his back pocket to trade flashes out for the mid lane. It's a good trade against Syndra, who wants to be the one dictating the lane and can now no longer play aggressive without her flash up. He still gets priority, but can't quite push the lead the way he wants to. By 15 minutes into the game, Abbedagge is effectively a non-factor. The only big individual mistake Abbedagge makes this game is getting caught in his rotatos after trying to cover a bot dive while his mid turret was down. FlyQuest have complete control of the bottom jungle, and after the bot dive has been fended off, Abbedagge takes a lazy path through his own jungle. He could have taken the blast cone over the wall even to stay alive, but doesn't and ends up getting killed. The actual backbreaking play this game comes as a result of more lackadaisical warding. While they siege mid, they leave a flank ward up for Kumo to TP on, and Afromu intelligently engages right when Abbedagge uses his E, so there's no more disengage tools available. Without that up, it's an easy chase down for the side of FlyQuest. And even if Abbedagge did end up ulting a close target, it wouldn't have gotten a kill because he's become so useless already in this game. With all of this taken into consideration, I cannot agree with the community singling out Abbedagge. This felt like the entire team asleep at the wheel because they were going up against an opponent that they thought their bare minimum could beat. Second up is Bwipo's Scion against EG and the game that he rushed, Hullbreaker.
We got a bloody top lane up here. Freak Jungler constantly going up there. What's the gasp?
Is it? I forget what Hullbreaker's build path is.
Oh.
Or is this just Divine Sunderer?
He was immediately called out by fans for both the build and his play, reminding them of the Baus. But the question is, how bad exactly was the build? If the criticism is just that the build wasn't optimal, I don't think anyone's gonna disagree, myself included. But if you're saying that the build cost them the game, then I will disagree. Personally, I find itemization critiques kind of like critiquing the icing on a cake. When it's fucked up, it's very obvious to point out, but it's hardly ever the reason the cake actually tastes like shit. More often than not, gameplay and drafts will be the reason that someone loses a game, and builds only become the difference maker in really close games. I think item debates get so much attention because it's an easy opportunity for armchair analysts to backseat pros, and it's something we assume that most pros should know the optimal build path. However, as a Scion, as long as you're building the right items in your class, you're still going to be able to do your job. It's not like Bwipo couldn't try and ult in just because he built Hullbreaker. Looking at the actual use cases for Hullbreaker, it's an extremely gold efficient item. And Bwipo often builds it in solo queue. After getting a solo kill on Impact's Gnar, he felt like he was enough ahead in the game to try making it work here over rushing a mythic item. The problem is, this isn't solo queue. Impact isn't the scrub, and EG have brains to know they need to recover his lane. The following top dive goes 1-for-1, Impact gets a solo kill, and Inspire counterganks a long chase down sequence in the top lane. 12 minutes into the game, Bwipo has now died 4 times. To be fair, Hullbreaker does do some work on turrets. Its passive works with Demolish, doing about 300 extra damage in the mid to late game than you would normally get from a Demolish proc. You could argue that the Hullbreaker helps him finish off the top tier 1 as well as drop the bot inhibitor turret down to 50% HP. The problem is that these moments and upsides come at way too much of an opportunity cost in pro play. Most of the time, a tank in pro play after getting the shove wants to go group with his team to help secure vision, look for flank opportunities, or even just disappear into the fog of war to pressure their opponents. To get Hullbreaker value, you need to ignore all of that and just keep walking up in the lane. For Team Liquid's team comp this game, it's still able to function without the Scion there because they have the Trundle to fulfill all those frontlining duties and obligations, but the team's win conditions are still clearly front-to-back team fighting, which the Hullbreaker does nothing to advance. It's hard to argue that it was put to good use when it was really only capitalized on twice in the entire game. Yes, I know he had more resist side laning versus Gnar, but it doesn't matter. The lack of resist when the passive of Hullbreaker drops off combined with Redemption means that Scion is missing a ton of resist in the mid to late game team fights. Also, those two items are a total mismatch of intention. Redemption can technically be used wherever you want, but it's not really going to advance your game plan of getting the push in the side lane versus Gnar. If you wanted to combine an item with some team focus as well as split push attention, I really think Titanic Hydra is the better bet. For a scaling tank like Scion, base HP regen becomes inconsequential, and in team situations, you can ignore literally everything on Hullbreaker except the AD and HP. Even without including the cleave on hit damage in team situations, Titanic gives more AD and HP in mid to late game team fights, and whenever you get to proc that, it will do even more. As I said before though, we're debating the icing on the cake right now when Bwipo's gameplay was a much bigger issue. Who cares if you rush Chemtech or Hullbreaker or Titanic when you can't even click a lantern at your feet? Redemption doesn't help the split push, but it also doesn't help his team when he doesn't activate it until the entire team is dead. This last one is a game-breaking mistake in a critical team fight. Titanic Hydra would have killed JoJo slightly faster after packaging in, but a properly used Redemption on that package would have saved his entire backline. We can agree that his items were pretty horribly optimized in this game, while also acknowledging that the biggest mistakes he made had nothing to do with those items. That's gonna do it for this week of the Blame Game. Thank you all for tuning in and watching. I'm a little sad that not all the lineups were available for the kickoff of the season, but hey, at least the season has started up again finally. Next week, make sure to tune in for the ending of groups and the beginning of the best of threes. I'll see you guys then.
Well. You thought I wouldn't make it into 2022 and still be doing these interviews. Some of you said I was done, I was a has-been, I was washed. But guess what? I'm still here. And you know what else I'm still doing? Touting Alienware. That's right. They are continuing to do awesome stuff. And they just announced a bunch of great stuff at CES a couple of weeks ago, including a new notebook, 34-inch OLED, some new monitors, some cool concepts that we'll have to see when or how those end up coming out. But either way, please check out Alienware. They support everything we do here. Love them as a sponsor. And there's a link in the description.